I want you to imagine that you're standing in a brightly lit room.
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Right. And in the dead center of this room, just resting on a solid table, is a heavy bar of gold.
A literal gold bar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And right next to it, there's a legally binding contract. I mean, it's stamped by a judge, it's got the state seal, and it explicitly states that you are the sole uncontested owner of that gold.
So you're feeling pretty good about your financial
You
situation.
feel totally secure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have the weight of the law, you've got the backing of the state, the whole consensus of society is confirming that this incredibly valuable resource belongs to you.
Yeah, nobody can touch it.
But then suddenly the door just gets kicked open.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. A guy walks in and he's carrying a loaded shotgun.
Sure.
He points it straight at your chest and he just says, the gold is his.
That changes things fast.
Right. And in that exact fraction of a second, I really want you, the listener, to ask yourself, who actually owns the gold? Is it your stamped piece of paper or is it his shotgun?
I mean, it's the shotgun.
Right.
Instantly. Yeah. The contract doesn't burn up. The judge hasn't changed their mind. But the entire reality of that room has just been completely overwritten by the gun.
Exactly, overwritten. And today we are doing a deep dive into a text that essentially proves your contract, your laws, your bank account, basically the entirety of what you and I consider civilization is nothing but a shared, incredibly fragile hallucination.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It really is. The premise is that the only thing that is actually real, fundamentally, is the shotgun.
Yeah.
So welcome to this deep dive. And honestly, if you're listening to this on your commute or, maybe while you're out walking your dog, I need you to mentally prepare yourself a bit.
Yeah, this isn't a light one.
No, not at all. We're not just exploring some, quirky sociological theory today. We are going to completely deconstruct the bedrock of human society.
We're taking it down to the studs.
Taking it down to the studs, we're stripping away the illusions of daily life to examine the raw, physical, almost clinical mechanics of power, society, and survival.
And the document we're dissecting today, it's titled Highest Physical Negation Power in Human Society, V1.
Which is quite a mouthful.
It really is. And I should warn you right up front, the concepts we are about to unpack here are dense.
Very dense.
Yeah, they're written with this cold, really unforgiving precision, almost like a mathematical proof. But the author is applying that math to human blood, human bodies, and the entire span of human history.
It's intense.
It's a radical dissection of reality. It completely refuses to flatter us as a species.
Yeah, there's no sugarcoating.
None. But, and this is the key, once you actually understand the mechanics of this text, it is profoundly world-altering.
Totally. I mean, you will never look at a billionaire, a police officer, or even a political headline the exact same way ever again.
You can't unsee it.
You really can't. So we're going to take our time with this today. We're going to spend the next hour or so meticulously unpacking every single vocabulary term, every philosophical premise, all the math analogies in the text.
Break it all down.
Right, breaking it down so that even the most complex PhD-level concepts become crystal clear.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the very first thing that hit me, like a ton of bricks when I read this document, was its definition of reality.
The entity versus non-entity framework.
Yes. The core thesis, like the inescapable premise here, is that almost everything you and I interact with on a daily basis is a non-entity.
Meaning it doesn't actually exist.
Exactly. It doesn't exist in the physical universe. The author basically demands that before we can even begin to understand how the world is actually run, we have to divide the entire universe of human experience into two unyielding categories: entities and non-entities.
It's a binary.
A strict binary. And I want to spend some real time here because if we don't grasp this fundamental division, literally the rest of the theory won't make any sense.
Right, it's the foundation of the whole house.
So let's start with entities. What exactly in this framework qualifies as an entity?
Well, in the strictest terms of this text, an entity is something that exists in the objective physical universe. And it exists utterly, regardless of whether human beings are there to observe it or believe in it or sign a contract agreeing on it.
So it's independent of us.
Totally independent. It has mass. It occupies physical space. It operates strictly on the laws of thermodynamics.
Right.
Like, if all human consciousness just vanished tomorrow, an entity would still be sitting there.
Okay, I'm following.
Now, the text focuses on two primary entities that, according to the author, drive the entirety of human history. And the first category is real resources,
Okay, real resources. When I hear that, my brain immediately goes to commodities.
like raw materials.
Yeah. Land, fresh water, crude oil, timber, iron ore.
And you'd be right. Those are certainly real resources. They're the physical building blocks of our environment.
Makes sense.
But the text makes a crucial and honestly a very chilling addition to that list.
Oh,
It categorizes human beings ourselves as the ultimate real resource.
wow. Okay, I really want to pause on this. Humans as a resource. And just to be clear, the author doesn't mean this in the corporate HR department sense, right? Like, oh, our talent is our greatest human capital.
No. Nothing like that.
They mean it in a raw, biological, and mechanical way.
Completely biological. You have to think of a human being purely as an engine,
An engine.
a thermodynamic machine, right? We consume calories and we produce kinetic energy. We are literally engines of labor that manipulate the physical environment.
That is, I mean, that's a harsh way to look at us.
It's incredibly clinical.
Hmm.
But think about it. We dig the iron, we pump the water, we chop the timber. Without the human animal, an oil field is literally just prehistoric sludge trapped under some rock.
It has no utility.
Exactly. Without the human animal, a fertile valley is just grass. Humans are the central processors that turn the rest of the physical world into something usable or valuable.
So we are the mechanism of extraction.
We are. Therefore, the text argues to control the physical world, an elite group must first control the most valuable, primary, real resource of all.
Which is the human animal itself.
Exactly.
It's basically treating us as the hardware of the planet. We're just biological batteries.
Style. Yeah.
Yeah, very Matrix. Okay, so human bodies and natural materials make up the first half of the entity category.
Yeah.
The second half is the actual phrase that forms the title of the document, and it's a bit of a mouthful. Highest physical negation power.
Yes. The core concept.
We really need to drill down into this terminology because it is the engine of the entire theory. What is this?
So, highest physical negation power is a highly clinical, very sterilized term for a brutally simple reality. Human violence against other humans.
Violence.
Yes, it represents the entire spectrum of physical force, ranging from the credible threat of bodily harm all the way up to actual physical death.
But why the clunky jargon? I mean, why wouldn't the author just call it violence or lethal force?
Right.
Using the word negation just feels so detached, like a math problem.
And that detachment is entirely intentional by the author. They want us to stop looking at violence through our usual lens of morality or emotion.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they want us to look at it strictly through the lens of physics and reality manipulation.
Reality manipulation. Unpack that for me.
Well, to mathematically negate something means to nullify it, right?
Ooh.
To cancel it out completely.
Like a negative number canceling a positive one?
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
In this physical framework, when a human being exerts lethal violence upon another human being, they aren't just committing a crime in the legal sense.
What are they doing?
They are literally negating that person from the physical universe. They are taking an entity, a human resource, and physically deleting it from the board.
It's the ultimate veto power over reality.
Precisely. It's not an argument. It's not a debate in a town hall.
Right.
If I negate you, your ability to interact with the physical world drops to absolute zero.
Mhm.
It is the physical removal of a component of the universe.
Wow. Okay, just to lock this in for everyone listening, the only things that truly physically exist in this framework, the entities, are physical resources, which primarily means us, human bodies.
Right.
And the physical capacity to destroy those bodies, which is the negation power.
The hardware and the hammer.
The hardware and the hammer. I like that. That's it. Everything else, literally everything else, is a non-entity.
Every single other thing you can think of.
Okay, let's transition to those then.
Hmm.
The text lists two main non-entities that seem to govern our lives: power and rules.
Yes.
Now, I need you to explain how power is not an entity, because if I see a dictator commanding an army, that feels pretty physical to me.
I get that. It requires a very subtle but incredibly vital shift in how we perceive action.
Okay.
Remember the shotgun from your opening scenario with the gold bar?
Yeah, the guy bursting through the door.
Right. The shotgun itself, the steel barrel, the gunpowder, the lead pellets, that is an entity. It physically exists.
Okay.
The human being holding that shotgun is an entity. But the decision of whether or not to actually pull the trigger, that decision is a non-entity. It exists purely in the electrochemical firing of neurons inside a human mind.
Because you can't touch a thought.
Exactly. That invisible, totally subjective decision-making process is what the text actually defines as power.
Power is just the decision.
Right. Power is the subjective control over the physical entity of violence. You cannot physically touch a decision. You can't put authority on a bathroom scale and weigh it.
It has zero mass.
Zero mass.
Yeah.
Therefore, according to the physics of this text, it is a non-entity.
Okay, I definitely see the distinction now. The gun is real. The thought, I might fire this gun, is just a thought, so it's non-entity.
Spot on.
And what about rules? The text defines rules as a binary of identification and non-identification. How do our laws fit into this?
Well, rules are the ultimate non-entity. They're basically the invisible lines we draw in the air and then mutually agree to respect.
Like borders.
Like borders, property rights, constitutions, moral codes, every single law. None of these exist in the actual physical universe.
It's hard to wrap my head around that because they dictate our whole lives.
They do, but physically they aren't there. If you take a physical, printed copy of the United States Constitution and you drop it in the middle of the Amazon rainforest,
The animals don't care.
the jaguars and the ants are not going to respect it. It holds absolute zero physical force.
Right.
The text argues that rules basically boil down to a very simple binary response from the human resource.
Which is?
Do you identify with the rule, or do you not identify with it?
Okay, I'm trying to process the real-world implications of this, and it's honestly incredibly unsettling.
It shakes the ground a bit, yeah.
It does, because if I'm following this logic, human beings are just the hardware, the physical meat and bone,
Right.
and all of our laws, our cultures, our beloved institutions, basic human rights, they are literally just software.
Just code running on the hardware.
Does this mean our subjective feeling of living in a meaningful, civilized society is basically just a biological limitation?
How do you mean?
Like, are we wired to hallucinate this software just so we don't have to face the terrifying, constant reality of the hardware, the violence?
You've just hit the exact philosophical nerve of the entire text. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Your subjective feeling of civilization is essentially a biological coping mechanism.
Wow.
Humans are deeply social collective animals. Our brains evolved over millions of years to operate in groups for survival.
Because one human alone gets eaten by a tiger.
Exactly. The text explicitly states that the individual's subjective feeling of cutting up and owning reality, like when we say, this is my land or this is my bank account,
Right.
that becomes a self-consistent existence for us precisely because we are so social. We reinforce the hallucination for each other.
So we all basically agree to play the exact same video game, and that's why the digital coins feel so real to us.
That is a perfect analogy. Let's go back to your gold bar in the contract.
Okay.
The contract represents a rule, a non-entity. In the physical universe, that piece of paper has absolutely zero physical tether to the actual gold bar.
The gold doesn't know I own it.
The gold does not care. The atoms of the gold do not magically change their alignment because a human judge signed a paper with a pen.
Right.
That ownership only exists because we have a shared hallucinated consensus, a software program currently running in the brains of the surrounding human resources.
Which says the paper dictates where the gold goes.
Exactly.
Right. And if that guy walks in with the shotgun, the physical highest negation power, an entity,
Yes.
he introduces the physical hardware directly into our little software simulation.
And what happens when you hit a computer with a hammer? The hardware always crashes the software.
Every time.
The shotgun negates the contract instantly. The text actually makes it a fundamental law in human society. Entities come first.
Always them first.
They are the absolute cornerstone of reality. Non-entities, like your power and your rules, are built on top of those entities.
Like a fragile house of cards.
Yes. And the tragedy, according to the author, is that the vast majority of people never distinguish the boundary line between the two.
We confuse the paper for the gold.
We go through our whole lives thinking the legal contract is as real as the physical gold bar. We genuinely think a law physically protects us.
But the super elites, the people who actually engineer and run the world, they know the exact difference, don't they?
Oh, they know intimately. They know the contract is just a spell they cast on the masses to keep them in line.
Okay, that brings up a huge point. If rules and laws don't physically exist, then why do billions of people wake up every single day and trade their literal blood, sweat, and physical labor for numbers on a screen?
To get the non-entity money.
Right. How did the elites hack our biological software to create wealth?
This is where we get into section 2.
Right, which leads us to this fascinating concept in the text, the power law distribution. The author claims that because humans are social animals, the mastery of real resources naturally follows this extreme power law.
Yes, the power law is crucial.
Let's dig into that, because I think most people don't fully get what a power law actually looks like.
Well, a power law distribution is a mathematical principle, and it's absolutely vital to understand why society looks the way it currently does.
Okay.
Most people, when they think of wealth or power distribution, they picture a bell curve.
Right, like a normal distribution, where you have a few really poor people, a few really rich people, and this massive, bulging middle class right in the center.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a power law is not a bell curve, not even close. A power law looks like a hockey stick.
A hockey stick.
Yeah. It dictates that a microscopic minority at the absolute extreme tip of the spectrum holds a vastly disproportionate amount of a variable.
While the rest of us hold nothing.
Basically,
Yeah.
the overwhelming massive majority at the bottom of the hockey stick holds almost nothing. It means, say, 1% of the population controls 90% of the resources.
Right.
And it gets worse. Within that 1%, 0.1% controls 90% of that. It gets exponentially more concentrated the higher up the stick you go.
And the text argues this isn't an accident, right? It's not like a failure of modern capitalism or a glitch in a specific political system.
No, the text says it's a fundamental attribute of humans simply being collective animals.
Because we naturally organize into these hierarchies just to survive.
Yes, and those hierarchies mathematically, inevitably, condense all the resources to the absolute top node.
Okay, but here's a specific phrase from the text that I really want you to break down. It says, wealth is a non-entity digital game.
A great line.
It argues that wealth is fabricated by forcibly binding real resources to human consensus.
Yes.
I really need you to explain the how and why of this, because I'm telling you, when my mortgage is due at the end of the month, that feels like a very real, very physical entity to me.
I know it does. But let's strip away the illusion of your mortgage for a second.
Okay, do your worst.
The billions of dollars owned by top elites, or the debt that you owe to your local bank, it is a non-entity digital game.
How so?
Because $1 billion in a bank account does not exist in physical reality. You cannot eat it.
No.
You cannot build a shelter out of it. You cannot use a digital bank balance to physically shield yourself from a bullet.
Right.
It is literally just pixels illuminated on a screen or ink on a ledger in some server farm. It is a rule. It is a non-entity.
Okay, I concede that. But it still controls my entire life. So how does a non-entity wield so much physical force over me?
Because of that exact phrase you highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
Forcibly binding real resources to human consensus.
The hacking of the software.
Yes. The elites have essentially hijacked the evolutionary biology of the human animal.
Wow. Okay, explain that.
Well, humans survived on the savannah by trusting the consensus of the tribe.
Right. Herd mentality kept us alive.
Right. If the tribe collectively said, that berry is poisonous, you believed it or you ate it and you died.
So we're hardwired to agree with the group.
Deeply hardwired. The elite have taken that deep-seated psychological need for consensus and they've mapped it onto abstract concepts, like money.
Okay.
They have convinced the vast majority of human individuals the real physical resources to identify with those pixels on the screen.
We believe the pixels matter.
And because millions of people all agree that those digits have value, those millions of people will gladly trade their actual physical labor.
Their finite time on Earth.
Exactly, their finite time and tangible physical goods just to acquire those non-entity digits.
It's astonishing when you really step back and look at it. The wealth only functions because the human resources are bound to the consensus.
That's the only glue holding it together.
And the moment that consensus breaks, the wealth just instantly vanishes into absolute nothingness.
It evaporates. Just look at historical examples of hyperinflation.
Like Weimar Germany.
Perfect example, Weimar Germany in the 1920s, or modern-day Zimbabwe.
Right.
The physical paper money still existed.
Mm-hmm.
The physical factories still stood there. The human bodies still existed.
So what broke?
The consensus broke. A software glitch occurred, and suddenly billionaires were utterly destitute because the human resources literally refused to identify with the rules of the currency anymore.
They stopped playing the video game.
They unplugged the console.
That makes perfect sense. And this naturally leads right into the text's incredibly detailed analysis of what a super elite actually is.
Right, the architects of the game.
Because a super elite isn't just someone who has a lot of this virtual pixel wealth, are they?
No, not at all.
According to this framework, a super elite is a minority collective that has mastered the intersection of both the entities and the non-entities.
That is the defining characteristic.
Okay. Can you walk us through how that works?
The text details the chronological ascension of a super elite.
Yeah.
It basically outlines a very specific spiral of power.
Okay. How does the spiral start?
Generally, a billionaire or a powerful collective first obtains their wealth through rules. They play the non-entity digital game beautifully.
So they play the market.
Right. They start a massive corporation. They leverage the stock market. They utilize highly complex legal contracts, patent laws, financial instruments.
Which are non-entities.
Pure non-entities.
Yeah.
And through them, they gather massive, ridiculous amounts of wealth.
Okay.
But the text is crystal clear. That is only step one.
Right, because we already established that wealth is just an accumulation of rules, and a shotgun can negate a rule instantly.
Exactly. So a smart billionaire knows that their wealth is incredibly fragile. It's just software.
So what's step 2?
To become a true super elite, the text says they must reach for power. They must convert their non-entity wealth into control over physical entities.
How do they actually do that?
Well, they buy media conglomerates. Why? To control the software human consensus.
Oh, wow.
But more importantly, they buy massive political influence to control the highest physical negation power of the state.
The military, the intelligence agencies, the police force.
Yes. They buy the hardware. They create a mutually reinforcing spiral. They use rules to get wealth. They use wealth to buy physical power. And then they use that physical power to enforce new rules that get them even more wealth.
It's a closed feedback loop of reality manipulation.
It is. And the text is explicit here. Ultimately, power is greater than rules.
Power is greater than rules.
Because power dictates the physical entities, and entities always trump non-entities.
And there's a fascinating geographical component to this spiral that the author brings up, right?
Yes. The distinction between global and local.
The author draws a very sharp, very deliberate distinction between global consensus and local rules. Can you unpack that?
So consensus in this text is the broader, deeply ingrained human psychological agreement.
Like a macro belief.
Yeah. For instance, the general consensus that gold holds value, or the consensus that the U.S. dollar functions as a global reserve currency, or the consensus of international banking networks.
Okay.
This consensus crosses borders. It doesn't care about geography. It is essentially a global operating system.
And what about rules?
Rules are the specific hyperlocal laws of a specific geographic area.
So like the corporate tax rate in France?
Exactly. Or the labor regulations in California, or environmental laws in Germany. These are local apps running on top of the global operating system.
Okay, so how do these super elites navigate the space between that global consensus and those local rules?
They surf the gap between them.
Surf the gap. I like that.
Because super elites operate above the purely local level, they play the global consensus against the local rules.
Can you give an example of that?
Look at the Panama Papers, or the double Irish tax loophole that big tech companies used for years.
Right.
If the local rules of country A demand a 40% tax on their wealth, the elite simply move their non-entity wealth to country B.
Leveraging the global consensus of offshore banking.
Yes. While entirely evading the physical friction of the local rules of taxation, they use the frictionless nature of the global software to escape the local hardware.
It proves yet again that rules are really just malleable, completely optional tools for the people who actually control the underlying entities.
Rules are for the little guys.
Which brings up a massive, massive operational question.
Okay, lay it on me.
If rules are just a digital game, just a software hallucination, how do elites actually enforce them in the physical world without constantly resorting to outright violence?
Oh.
Because I can look outside my window right now and I don't see the military holding a rifle to everyone's head to make them go to their office jobs or, pay their taxes.
It's mostly invisible.
Right. And the text points out a truly mind-bending detail here. It completely redefines the word identification.
This is perhaps the most vital mechanical insight in the entire document.
It says, and I quote, "Identification is not verbal or subjective agreement."
Yes. It takes a minute to really fully grasp this.
Please break it down.
When you and I normally use the word identify, we're talking about internal psychology, right?
Yeah, like I identify as a conservative, or I identify with the laws of my country because I believe in democracy.
Exactly. We think it implies a subjective, moral, internal agreement.
Right.
The author violently strips that subjective meaning completely away.
Okay, so what does it mean in this framework?
In the physics of this text, identification is an actual physical process.
Physical.
Yes, it is the physical act of a human being turning themselves into a real resource to operate the society according to the elite's rules.
Wait, I am struggling with this a bit. How is my mental agreement or my disagreement a physical process?
Okay, let's use a very concrete analogy.
Please.
Imagine you are driving your car on a highway and you approach a toll booth.
Okay, I'm at the toll booth.
The non-entity states you must pay $3 to cross the bridge.
Right.
Now, you might sit in your car and subjectively, vehemently disagree with that toll.
I hate toll.
Right. You might hate the toll authority. You might be literally screaming in your car about how corrupt the local government is. Your psychology is in total absolute rebellion.
Okay.
But if you physically hand over the $3 to the attendant, or you physically allow your digital transponder to be scanned,
Yeah.
your physical body has performed the exact mechanical action required by the rule you have physically identified.
Ah.
Well, wow. So the system literally does not care at all about my internal monologue.
Not even a little bit.
Hmm?
Your subjective disagreement is completely and utterly irrelevant to the super elite.
As long as I pay the $3.
All they care about is the physical compliance that keeps their resource extraction machine running. The text says, identification is the physical process of turning people into real resources.
By paying the toll, regardless of my anger, I am converting my physical energy, represented by that money, into fuel for their system.
Exactly.
Okay, but what if I refuse? What if I am so angry that I just put the pedal to the metal and try to drive my car right through the wooden barrier of the toll booth?
That is where the system defends itself.
This is where the text explains how elites use those who do identify to restrain those who do not identify, right?
Yes. And they do it on two distinct levels.
Let's look at the entity level first, the physical hardware level. How do elites restrain me when I smash through that toll booth? Well, the billionaire owner of the bridge doesn't come down from his penthouse and physically wrestle you to the pavement, does he?
No, he's probably on a yacht.
Right. Instead, the elite utilizes other human resources who have physically identified with the role of enforcer.
The police.
They deploy the police, the state troopers, or private security.
So the elite uses the physical highest negation power of Group A, the police, to physically restrain, arrest, or negate Group B, the rule breakers.
Precisely.
Group A has identified with the rule deeply enough to actually commit physical violence on behalf of the elite.
The hardware polices the hardware. It's incredibly efficient.
It is. But on the non-entity level, the software level, the control mechanism is even more insidious, isn't it?
Much more.
How do elites use identifiers to restrain non-identifiers without ever firing a shot or making an arrest?
They use social pressure, the legal system,
Yeah.
credit scores, reputation destruction.
How does that actually work in practice, like step by step?
Well, if you do not identify with the rule of paying your debts, for example, the elite doesn't necessarily need to send thugs to your house to break your legs.
Right, it's not the mob.
They just use bank employees, credit bureau algorithms, and social stigma.
Other human resources?
Yes, other human resources who do identify with the rules. They use them to freeze your bank accounts, deny you a mortgage, prevent you from renting an apartment, and socially isolate you.
So they use the software of consensus to digitally and socially quarantine you.
Yes. They squeeze your ability to survive until your physical body is practically forced into submission, all without a single drop of blood being spilled.
That is deeply unsettling. They essentially weaponize our own social, tribal nature against us.
It's a flawless system of control.
But this brings up a massive self-referential paradox, which the text actually explicitly highlights.
The problem of the rule makers.
Right. The elites build these non-entities, these laws, these credit systems to control the masses. But do these rules apply to the super elites who actually built them? Like, can the software actually control the hardware? Can a piece of paper, a regulatory law, actually check and balance the physical highest negation power that the elite wields?
This is the ultimate philosophical contradiction of human society. And the text's implicit answer is a resounding, unambiguous no.
The rules cannot check the power that created them.
No. It's the self-referential problem. If you write the rules and you control the physical force that enforces the rules.
Then you are inherently immune to the rules whenever they become inconvenient for you.
Exactly. We see this all the time.
We really do. When a massive multinational corporation or a top-tier billionaire faces legal trouble, The rules apply to them in a completely different dimension than they apply to an ordinary citizen.
A totally different reality.
Hmm.
An ordinary person gets caught stealing $100 from a register, they are physically negated, thrown into a concrete cell by the police.
Right.
A super elite collective is found guilty of laundering billions of dollars for global cartels, and what happens?
They pay a fine.
They pay a fine, a non-entity penalty. Why? Because the elite can deploy immense resources, armies of lawyers, and political leverage to rewrite, delay, or completely nullify the rules.
The hardware dictates the terms of the software.
Always.
It's the old saying, isn't it? Laws are like spider webs through which the big flies pass and the little ones get caught.
That perfectly captures it.
But a super elite still needs millions of people to genuinely believe in the spider web.
They do. They need constant identification.
And the text takes a very impartial, almost clinical look at how elites gather the necessary human resources to build these webs. It talks about grand narratives.
Grand narratives, yes.
Things like patriotism, freedom, democracy, justice, religious faith.
And we must maintain strict neutrality here, just as the author of the text does.
Absolutely. The text is not making a value judgment on these concepts.
Right. It is not saying democracy is inherently evil or that religion is inherently a lie.
No.
The author is looking at these concepts purely as mechanical tools within a sociological physics engine.
According to the text, these grand narratives are mechanisms engineered specifically to farm identification.
Farm identification. I love that phrasing.
Like cultivating crops. I really want to dig into that. How does an elite form a human being?
Think about the logistical nightmare of trying to control a country of 300 million people.
It's impossible.
A super elite collective needs millions of human resources to physically identify with their system just to keep the lights on. You cannot physically hold a gun to 300 million heads simultaneously.
It's mathematically impossible, it's way too expensive, and it's wildly inefficient.
Exactly. But if you can implant a non-entity narrative into their minds,
Just a virus.
like a deeply emotional belief in patriotism, or a fervent belief that they are fighting for a historical justice or manifest destiny,
Then what happens?
those human resources will willingly, passionately turn themselves into fuel for your system.
So the narrative does the heavy lifting for the elite.
It does all the work. Because they believe the narrative, they will volunteer to join your military and wield your negation power for you.
They'll give up their lives.
They will hand over 30% of their physical labor in the form of taxes, proudly. They will aggressively police their own neighbors for you.
So these grand narratives are essentially the ultimate, highly optimized software programs used to harness the largest possible share of human hardware.
That is exactly what they are.
So whether the narrative is a left-wing revolution, right-wing nationalism, a religious crusade, or even secular humanism, from the clinical perspective of this text, it is simply a magnetic field designed to attract human biological resources to a specific elite collective's power base.
Yes.
That is an incredibly objective, almost alien way to look at human history. I mean, it strips all the romance out of our historical textbooks.
It definitely does. There are no heroes in this framework, just successful farmers of human identification.
Wow. But the author doesn't just leave these as abstract philosophical paradoxes, do they?
No, the author wants to prove it mathematically.
Right. To prove exactly how this power dynamic works at the granular level, the text provides a highly specific, very stark mathematical thought experiment.
The room with 5 people.
Yes. And we need to spend a lot of time on this because it really is the linchpin of the entire document. I'll set the scene.
Go for it.
The premise is simple, almost like a dark sociological riddle. We have 5 people locked in a room.
5 ordinary people.
They're supposed to be negotiating the rules, the laws, and the social contract of their new micro-society.
Okay.
But before they speak, we are given the physical parameters of the room, the hardware limits. Here's the math. 1 revolver has the capacity to kill 4 people.
Right.
4 small knives, wielded together by 4 different people, have the capacity to kill 1 person.
That's the baseline.
Let's look at scene 1, the imbalanced national form. In this scene, 1 person holds the revolver. The other 4 people share exactly 1 small knife between them.
Okay, this scene requires a deep, really carpet-bombing analysis.
Let's do it.
Because scene 1 is not just a thought experiment. Scene 1 is the physical reality of almost every civilization, empire, and nation-state in human history.
Really? Let's break down the math the author provides.
Okay, the 1 person with the revolver controls 20% of the human resources, right?
Yeah.
Because he is just 1 out of the 5 bodies in the room.
Okay, 20%.
But Crucially, he controls 100% of the physical highest negation power.
Because his revolver can wipe out all four of the other people before they can get close enough to use their single knife.
Exactly. He has total negation dominance.
Meanwhile, the four people have 80% of the human resources. They are the vast, overwhelming majority in the room.
They have more brains, more labor capacity, more potential.
But they only have 25% of the negation power. A single knife cannot physically overcome a revolver across a room.
And here's the brutal, inescapable conclusion the text draws from this math.
What is it?
The four people with the knife have absolutely zero qualification to negotiate. Zero. They have no human rights. They have no civil liberties.
Why? I mean, they are the majority.
Because rights and rules are non-entities. They are software. And software only exists if the hardware supports it. In this room, the man with the revolver is the undisputed master of the hardware. The text says it plainly. Whatever he says, the four people can only identify with it. Non-identification means death.
Non-identification means death. Let's play this out realistically.
Sure.
If the man with the revolver says, the new rule is that you four must farm the food and give me 90% of it.
Okay.
And the four people say, we vote no, we do not identify with that rule, it is unjust. What actually happens?
He pulls the trigger. He negates the dissenter.
So the person with the revolver literally becomes the rules. He is a walking, breathing constitution.
Exactly. Because his physical violence exponentially overpowers theirs, his non-entity rules completely overwrite theirs.
There's no debate.
The four people instantly cease to be negotiators and become his negotiated real resources.
Wow.
They are no longer citizens. They are human batteries, powering whatever micro-society he decides to build.
This is what the text categorizes as an entity and non-entity imbalanced national form.
Yes. The distribution of physical force is entirely divorced from the distribution of the population. One side dictates reality, the other side simply submits to it, period.
I mean, think of feudalism.
Great historical example.
The lord in the castle with the armored knights is the revolver. The thousands of peasants with pitchforks are the single knife.
There is no negotiation in feudalism. There is only extraction.
Okay, let's change the variables. Let's look at scene 2. The relatively balanced national form. We are still in the room with 5 people.
Okay.
One person still holds the revolver, but this time the other 4 people together hold 4 small knives.
All right, one knife each. Meticulously parsing the math here changes the entire structure of the universe.
How so?
The one person still has 20% of the bodies and 100% of the negation power against any single individual. If he shoots, someone dies.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the 4 people, acting collectively with their 4 knives, also possess 100% physical highest negation power against him.
Oh, because if he shoots one person, the remaining 3 will cross the room with their knives and completely negate him.
Exactly. It is a perfect state of mutually assured destruction.
So, because the violence levels on both sides are physically equal, 1 revolver equals 4 knives in terms of total lethality, the text says the rights and the rules of the 1 person and the 4 people are suddenly equal.
Both sides suddenly have the qualification to negotiate.
This is profound, and it strips away literally all the high-minded philosophy we are taught in school about human rights.
It really does. Ask yourself, why do the 4 people have rights in scene 2 but not in scene 1?
It wasn't because of a moral awakening by the man with the gun.
No.
It wasn't because someone read a nice treatise on democracy to him. It wasn't a peaceful vote.
It was exclusively the introduction of 3 more physical knives into the room.
That's incredibly cynical.
The text argues that equality in rights and rules is born exclusively from an equality in physical violence.
Quality from violence.
When both sides can physically negate each other, neither side can force identification upon the other. They are forced to compromise.
Because they don't want to die.
Right. They are forced to sit down and create rules that both sides genuinely agree to because the alternative is mutual annihilation.
Okay, I have to push back here. I really have to challenge this because it just feels too dark.
Challenge away.
Does this text seriously imply that true equality, that actual democratic negotiation, is only born from the threat of mutually assured destruction?
Mathematically, yes.
But what about nonviolent resistance? Martin Luther King Jr. didn't have a revolver. Gandhi didn't use physical negation power to overthrow the entire British Empire.
Right.
How does this hyper-violent clinical framework account for massive moral revolutions that explicitly did not use violence?
That is the exact right question to ask, and the framework actually accounts for it perfectly, though not in the way we usually want it to.
Really?
Remember how elites restrain people? We talked about this. They use identifiers, the police, the military, to crush non-identifiers.
Right, the hardware polices the hardware. Right.
Exactly. What Gandhi and MLK did was operate brilliantly on the non-entity level, the
Mhm.
software level.
Okay, explain that.
They didn't fight the British Army or the segregated police force with physical weapons. They knew they'd lose that hardware battle.
Right.
Instead, through profound suffering and absolute moral clarity, they changed the consensus of the global software.
They hacked the narrative.
Yes, they made the elite's narrative so incredibly toxic that the elite's own enforcement class, the human resources they relied on to project violence, began to question their identification.
Oh, wow.
If the British soldiers refuse to fire on peaceful Indian protesters because the global consensus has shifted, the elite loses their physical negation power.
Their hardware gets bricked.
Precisely. The nonviolent protest didn't defeat the hardware with a better moral argument. It severed the elite's connection to their own hardware.
But the core rule remains. The elite only conceded when they realized they were losing their monopoly on physical force and resource extraction.
Exactly. The standoff was still governed entirely by power. Just soft power disabling hard power.
That is fascinating. The nonviolent resistor is basically attacking the elite's supply chain of human batteries.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, which brings us to the final scene in the room. Scene 3, the missing anchor.
This one is short, but vital.
It's almost poetic in its sheer emptiness. One person is in the room, he holds the revolver, but there are 0 other people.
The author introduces this scene to prove the absolute, unshakable core thesis of the entire document.
Which is?
The man in the room has 100% of the physical highest negation power.
Yeah.
He has infinite ability to create rules. He owns all the wealth in the room.
But who does he negotiate with?
Exactly. To whom does he apply his rights, his taxes, his laws? No one.
There's no one there.
And because there are no other human beings, no other real resources to farm, his immense power is utterly, completely meaningless.
He has the software, he has the ultimate hardware, but he has no engine to run it on. He is a billionaire alone on a dead planet.
Exactly. This reiterates that humans themselves and the sheer quantity of the population are the inescapable core anchor points of all resources and power.
The anchor.
A super elite is nothing without a massive population of ordinary people to identify with their rules and physically build their reality.
Right. A king without subjects is just a crazy man shouting in an empty field wearing a metal hat.
I love that image. But it's true. Real resources, physical negation power, and rules completely lose their meaning if they lose the anchor point centered on humans.
That completely reorients how we view the power dynamic. The elites need us infinitely more than we need them.
We are the battery. They're just the device.
Which leads us into a darker reality, the rigidity of systems and the eradication of alternatives.
Right.
Given that scene 1, the imbalanced form where a tiny minority holds the gun and the vast majority holds almost nothing, is the reality of most human societies historically and currently. What happens when a single super elite collective completely monopolizes the board?
The text gives a very specific, chilling example of a country where there is internally only one super elite collective.
Think of a totalitarian state or a society where corporate and state power have merged completely into one entity.
Right. They have achieved total dominance over both the entities, meaning they own the money, the land, the military.
And the non-entities, they write the laws, they control the media, they dictate the culture.
When a monopoly like this forms, their immediate, systematic, mathematically required goal becomes the absolute deprivation of negation power from anyone outside their collective.
They want to make absolute sure that the 4 people in the room never, ever get their hands on those extra 3 knives.
Exactly. They must ensure that the ordinary human individuals they rely on as resources possess absolutely zero capacity to physically threaten the super elite.
So how do they deprive individuals of this power?
Through 2 avenues. First, through real resources. They make weapons impossibly expensive, technologically restricted, or physically inaccessible to the underclass.
Gun control, demilitarization of the public.
Right. Second, through non-entities. They pass incredibly strict laws that criminalize the mere possession or even the thought of negation power by ordinary citizens,
They frame it as a moral evil.
while simultaneously expanding their own police and military forces.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
Always.
So if I'm an ordinary person living in this monopolized system and I feel the rules are deeply fundamentally unfair, I might think, okay, I won't use violence. I'm a civilized person. I'll use the legal system to fight the elite. I'll hire a lawyer. I'll use the rules against them.
That's the logical thought.
But the text explicitly states that because elites exist as a collective of both entity and non-entity, they play the game and judge the game at the exact same time.
It is entirely structurally futile to fight them with their own rules.
Mhm.
The text literally states there is no point discussing power and rules with them.
Why? I mean, surely the law is the law.
Because you are trying to use the software that they programmed, running on the servers that they own, to defeat them. If you somehow find a brilliant loophole in the law and actually start winning in court, what will they do?
They'll just change the law.
They will simply use their power to rewrite the rule tomorrow. Or, if the software completely fails to contain you,
Then what?
they will drop the non-entity facade entirely and deploy their physical highest negation power to crush you.
The shotgun comes out.
To play and judge at the same time means the game is fundamentally rigged at the hardware level.
So, if ordinary people are legally and physically disarmed and the rules are completely rigged, what actually checks a super elite? Does anything stop them from just consuming 100% of the resources until we all literally starve?
According to the text, the only thing that can effectively check a super elite is another super elite.
Another elite.
Yes, it can be an internal faction that splinters off like a civil war between generals, or an external super elite from another nation state,
Right.
like a world war.
Okay.
And when super elites compete against each other, they don't care about morals, human rights, or fairness. They compete on only two brutal mathematical benchmarks.
Which are?
Number one, whose entities and non-entities are stronger? Who has more capital, more advanced weaponry, and more persuasive propaganda?
And number two.
Whose number of identifying people is larger? Who has successfully captured and farmed more human resources to fuel their war machine?
It's purely a war of resource accumulation.
Totally. They continuously consume human resources to maintain or advance their position in the power law distribution.
This means every ideological battle you see on the news, every proxy war, every massive election cycle between deeply entrenched institutional powers is, at its core, just a competition to farm more human identification.
Precisely. They are fighting over the batteries.
Wow.
They need you to identify with their narrative, so you will fight their rival for them.
Okay, this paints a pretty bleak picture for the average listener.
Not uplifting, no.
Which brings us to a crucial part of the text, the physics of leverage and societal probability fluctuation. If the system is essentially a rigged casino, and the rules are written by the elites who own the building, what agency, if any, is actually left for the ordinary person?
The text explains that in these imbalanced, singular elite systems, the distribution of resources becomes practically locked. It becomes a deeply rigid system. If you are born into the vast majority at the bottom of the power law distribution, within the time scale of your individual human lifespan, your position is mathematically static.
You're stuck.
You are not going to become a super elite by simply following their rules and working hard.
Yeah.
The system is explicitly designed to extract your physical labor, not to promote you to the penthouse.
The author actually outlines the two choices left for ordinary people who want to change their position in life. Choice one is to utilize their extremely low share of rules and power.
Which means playing the game exactly as prescribed. Working hard at your job, trying to save a little money, voting in local elections, petitioning your local government.
Basically doing what you're told.
The text note this has a positive probability, meaning yes, you might slightly improve your life, buy a nicer car, get a slightly bigger house, but your overall position in the macro power law distribution remains practically locked. The vast majority of the board, the true wealth and power, is already owned by the super elites. You are fighting for fractional scraps within their parameters.
Which leads to choice two. And this is highly controversial, but mathematically essential to the author's framework.
It is the only alternative.
Choice two is the utilization of physical highest negation power against super elites. The text says this choice has an uncertain probability, but massive fluctuation.
We really need to deeply analyze this concept of leverage and probability fluctuation.
What does the author mean by this?
Let's delve into the actual physics of this sociological model. The author introduces a concept of leverage. Think of society as a massive, complex machine.
Okay.
If an ordinary person uses physical highest negation power against another ordinary person,
like two poor people fighting to the death over a piece of bread, or a gang war in a low-income neighborhood.
right, the probability fluctuation for the national system is practically zero.
Hmm.
The macro machine does not care at all.
One human battery negated another human battery.
The super elites at the top don't even feel a tremor in their flare boards.
It's just background noise in the hardware. It doesn't threaten the system. If anything, it keeps the bottom divided.
Exactly. But if an ordinary person or a group of ordinary people directs physical highest negation power directly at a super elite,
Yeah.
if they physically destroy a vital node of control at the very top of the power law hierarchy, the leverage is astronomical.
Why?
The text states that because the super elite is the source code of the rules and the controller of vast resources, physically negating them causes a massive probability fluctuation throughout the entire national form system.
It violently destabilizes the lock distribution.
It shatters the rigidity.
I want to build on that casino metaphor to make sure we are grasping the sheer scale of this leverage.
Go for it.
Let's say you're in a casino and the roulette wheel has magnets under it. The blackjack decks are stacked.
A totally rigged game.
Playing by the rules, placing your chips, hoping for the best, using your low share of rules, means you just bleed out slowly. Your loss is mathematically locked in by the house edge.
You might win one hand, but the house takes everything eventually.
Right. The only way to change the probability of the entire casino, the only way to genuinely stop the bleed, is to kick over the roulette table, pull out a baseball bat, and threaten the pit boss.
It's the only way to force them to stop the game and restart.
That is a perfect expansion of the analogy.
The casino, the entire system of entities and non-entities, is built to constantly, quietly extract your resources. Kicking over the table is the injection of raw, physical, highest negation power into a space that is normally governed strictly by non-entity rules.
And the leverage gained by threatening the pit boss, the super elite, far exceeds the slow bleed of playing by the rules.
It forces a complete systemic reset of the board.
And this exact dynamic, this terrifying mathematical leverage, is precisely why elites allow only an extremely low proportion of ordinary people to possess highest physical negation power.
Because if every single player walking into the casino is carrying a baseball bat, the pit boss has to negotiate the odds fairly.
If they rig the wheel too, obviously, the table gets kicked over immediately. The rigid system can't stay rigid if the hardware is equally distributed.
Exactly. The elites understand the math better than anyone. They know that a single weapon directed upwards has millions of times more systemic leverage than 1,000 weapons directed sideways.
Therefore, the absolute highest priority of their non-entity rules is to ensure the ordinary people never realize or possess that physical capability.
Keep the bats out of the casino.
Man, this is heavy. We are looking at the absolute skeleton of civilization here, which brings us to our final section.
The end of the cycle.
We have reached the ultimate chilling conclusion of this text. If human society is just this super chaotic system, a rigged casino held together by physical violence and the illusion of rules, where does the cycle end?
What is the logical conclusion of the math?
Exactly.
The author identifies the one single element in this entire super chaotic system that never changes. The unchanging anchor.
And what is it?
It is, once again, the physical highest negation power.
Why is that the anchor?
Because, as we established in the very beginning of this deep dive, all real resources, all power, all wealth, all rules, all grand narratives revolve around one single core point, the human unit.
The human battery, the hardware that runs the software.
Yes. But the physical highest negation power has a unique, absolute property. It is the only force capable of annihilating the human unit itself. The author compares it to mathematics. If human beings are the numbers in the equation of society, physical highest negation power is the multiplier of zero.
And anything multiplied by zero becomes zero.
Exactly. Imagine a super elite collective. They have $1 billion of non-entity wealth, a massive network of political power, and incredibly complex rules ensuring their dominance.
Okay.
But a bomb drops on their city and destroys all the human resources.
Their wealth multiplied by zero is zero.
Their power multiplied by zero is zero. Their rules multiplied by zero is zero. Because physical negation power can literally delete the anchor point of society, it is the ultimate, inescapable law of reality that permanently supersedes all human illusions.
And the text views human history through this very grim, cyclical lens, doesn't it?
It does. It argues that history is just a super chaotic system attempting to self-regulate.
It's full of wars, revolutions, plagues, and massive death events because the system continually becomes too rigid.
The power law distribution gets too extreme, the elites consume too much, and eventually the hardware resets the software.
The multiplier of zero clears the board so a new game can start.
It is a cyclical view of history driven entirely by physics and violence, not by a moral arc bending toward justice or by progressive enlightenment.
Old super elites become rigid. They are physically negated by the leverage of a new group. New super elites rise, they write new rules, they farm new identification.
Until they too become rigid and are violently reset. The text states it plainly. There is nothing new under the sun. Human society has always cycled like this.
But then, right at the very end of the document, almost as a parenthetical note, the author introduces a terrifying modern caveat.
The concept of the total negators.
Yes, and this is where the theory moves from historical to totally existential.
Historically, a sword, a guillotine, or a primitive gun could only multiply a small number of humans by 0 at a time.
The cycle could reset locally, a French Revolution here, a Chinese dynasty collapsing there, but humanity as a whole survived globally.
But the text notes that we have now mathematically unlocked physical highest negation power that transcends the internal power law distribution entirely.
It mentions the theoretical human-made reality of nuclear weapons and the astronomical reality of asteroid impacts.
These are forces that don't just kick over the roulette table. They vaporize the entire city the casino is built in.
They negate all humanity simultaneously. They destroy the human anchor entirely, meaning there is no cycle left to restart.
It is the ultimate endpoint of the entity and non-entity framework. If the human resource is deleted entirely by a total negator, then the entire hallucination of human civilization, every constitution, every dollar, every super elite, every grand narrative instantly vanishes back into the void of the cold, physical universe.
The software is deleted permanently because the hard drive is destroyed.
Precisely.
Wow. Okay, I think we all need to take a deep breath here.
It's a lot to take in.
We have just taken an immense, rigorous journey through one of the most clinical, unsentimental dissections of human reality I have ever encountered.
Pulls no punches.
We started by realizing that the wealth we chase every single day is essentially a digital game built on enforced biological consensus. We moved through the harsh mathematical truths of the revolver and the knives, realizing that rights only exist where physical force is equal.
And we've arrived at this stark, undeniable understanding that all of our beloved societal rules are ultimately anchored by nothing more than our fragile biological bodies and our capacity for physical destruction.
It is a framework that systematically strips away every comforting illusion we hold about civilization.
It forces you to look at the skeletal structure of power, without any of the flesh and blood of morality to soften the image.
And as I promised at the beginning of this deep dive, this fundamentally changes the way you, the listener, should view the world around you.
Absolutely.
The next time you watch the daily news, the next time you see political grandstanding, a new cultural movement, or a fiery debate over the distribution of wealth, I challenge you.
Don't look at it as a moral battle between good and evil.
Exactly. Look at it through the lens of this text. It is a mathematical competition between super elites for your identification. It is a battle to farm you, the human resource, to maintain their position in the power law distribution.
The software is just fighting for control of your hardware.
And remember the absolute difference between entities and non-entities. When a crisis hits, watch what the people in power actually do with physical resources and physical force, not what they say in their non-entity press releases or laws.
The hardware will always reveal the truth.
Which leaves me with a final lingering thought, a question inspired by the chilling end of this text.
What is it?
If human society is just a self-regulating, chaotic game of leverage anchored by the human unit, what happens to our rules, our morals, our entire non-entity software program as the highest physical negation power of technology becomes democratized?
Oh, that's a terrifying thought.
I'm not just talking about nuclear weapons controlled by states. I'm talking about the future. AI-driven drone swarms, synthesized bioweapons created in basement labs, cyber warfare that can shut down entire power grids.
The barriers to entry are dropping.
What happens when the technological barrier to entry drops so low that the multiplier of zero is placed directly into the hands of the ordinary person?
If every single person suddenly holds the equivalent of the revolver in scene 1.
Exactly. Does the rigged game of civilization finally break forever in a storm of mutually assured destruction? Or does it force us to evolve into an entirely new, unrecognizable national form where true equality is mandated by ultimate leverage?
Something to think about the next time you wake up. Make your coffee and assume the world around you is perfectly solid.